It is one of the single most horrific episodes of racial violence in American history, and for nearly a century, it was deliberately forgotten. This wasn't a riot, it was a massacre. It wasn't a clash, it was an extermination. This is the story of a community that built an empire only to watch it turn to ash. A story hidden in plain sight, buried under decades of silence, fear, and a coordinated effort to erase it from the national memory. This is the story of Black Wall Street and the fire that consumed it. Imagine, in the heart of segregated America, a place of extraordinary prosperity. This wasn't a dream, it was real. It was the Greenwood District in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
In the early 1920s, Greenwood was the wealthiest Black community in the United States. It was founded by visionaries, men like O.W. Gurley, a wealthy landowner who in 1906 purchased 40 acres of land and dedicated it to being sold only to other Black settlers. They weren't just building houses, they were building an autonomous world. The district was a testament to self-sufficiency. It spanned 35 square blocks. It had its own banks, its own luxury hotels, like the Stratford Hotel, believed to be the largest Black-owned hotel in America. It had grocery stores, movie theaters, law offices, and doctors. It had 2 newspapers, a hospital, and a school system that rivaled the white schools on the other side of town. This wasn't just a neighborhood, it was an economic powerhouse. Money circulated within Greenwood, enriching the community from the inside. They have their own millionaires driving their own luxury cars. Booker T. Washington himself was so impressed, he is said to have coined the name the Negro Wall Street. To the white residents of Tulsa, separated by the Frisco Railroad tracks, Greenwood was a source of deep, simmering resentment. In a country gripped by the failures of Reconstruction and the rise of the Ku Klux Klan, Black success was not just envied, it was seen as a threat. In 1921, Tulsa was a tinderbox. The Red Summer of 1919, a period of intense racial violence across the country, was a recent memory. The KKK was marching openly, its membership soaring. The city was saturated with racial hatred, and it needed only a single spark to explode. That spark came on May 30th, 1921. A 19-year-old Black shoeshiner named Dick Rowland entered the Drexel building downtown to use the segregated restroom on the top floor. The elevator was operated by a 17-year-old white girl named Sarah Page. What happened next in that elevator remains a mystery. The most accepted account is that Rowland, perhaps tripping, stumbled and grabbed Page's arm to catch his balance. She screamed. Rowland fled, terrified, knowing what even an accidental contact could mean. The police were called. The next day, May 31st, Dick Rowland was arrested. The story might have ended there, but the local media wouldn't let it. That afternoon, the Tulsa Tribune, a white-owned newspaper, published an inflammatory front-page article with the headline, "Nab Negro for Attacking Girl in Elevator." Worse, an accompanying editorial, which since has mysteriously vanished from all archived copies, reportedly ran under the title, "To Lynch Negro Tonight." The call to violence was clear. By 7:30 p.m., a white mob began to gather outside the Tulsa County Courthouse, where Dick Rowland was being held. They numbered in the hundreds, and they were open about their intentions. They were there for a lynching. Word of the mob reached Greenwood. The Black community, which included many decorated World War I veterans, was not going to let a lynching happen. They were new Negroes, assertive, proud, and unwilling to bow to racial terror. A group of about 30 Black men, many in their military uniforms, went to the courthouse not to start a fight, but to offer the sheriff their help in protecting Rowland. Sheriff Willard McCulley, to his credit, turned them away. He insisted he had the situation under control. He had barricaded Rowland on the top floor. But as the Black men left, they were confronted by the growing white mob, which now numbered over 1,500. A white man tried to disarm one of the Black veterans. A struggle ensued. a shot was fired, and in that single catastrophic moment, all hell broke loose. The 30 black men were outnumbered. They retreated, fighting their way back across the railroad tracks into Greenwood. The white mob, now enraged and hungry for blood, pursued them. But the mob didn't just chase them. It stopped to loot hardware stores and pawn shops, arming itself to the teeth. They were no longer just a mob. They were becoming an army. Back in Greenwood, residents prepared for a siege. They knew what was coming. The railroad tracks became the front line. For several hours, a running gun battle raged in the dark. But the fight wasn't equal. As the night wore on, the mob's numbers swelled into the thousands, and they received help. Tulsa police officers, rather than stopping the violence, joined it. They deputized hundreds of white rioters, handing them badges and weapons, giving them the official sanction of the state to attack a neighboring community. The attack on Greenwood began in earnest at dawn on the morning of June 1st. A whistle blew, and the invasion started. It was coordinated. It was systematic. This was not a riot. It was a military-style assault on a civilian population. The mob poured into Greenwood from all sides, overwhelming the black defenders who had fought bravely through the night. They shot black residents on sight, men, women, children. They dragged people from their homes and gunned them down in the street. Olivia Hooker, a 6-year-old survivor, later recalled huddling under a table as white men broke into her home, systematically destroying every possession, piece by piece. They took a phonograph and smashed it. They ripped her mother's clothes. They moved to the dining room and took a pickaxe, as she called it, to her sister's beautiful piano. As the invaders moved through the streets, they didn't just loot, they burned. They set fire to businesses and homes using kerosene-soaked rags, but the most terrifying attack came from above. Survivors, in accounts that were disbelieved for decades, reported seeing airplanes flying low over Greenwood. These weren't passenger planes. They were privately owned planes co-opted for the attack. From the sky, they rained down what survivors called firebombs, turpentine balls or sticks of dynamite, onto the roofs of buildings, turning Greenwood into a raging inferno. In the 21st century, we call this an airstrike. In 1921, this was an act of domestic aerial bombing against an American city by its own citizens. The fire spread with horrifying speed. The magnificent Stratford Hotel, the Dreamland Theater, the offices of the Tulsa Star, the banks, the churches, the homes, all of it was consumed by a pillar of black smoke that could be seen for miles. As the flames rose, the white mob blocked the fire department from entering Greenwood. Firefighters who tried to respond were threatened at gunpoint and turned away. The city of Tulsa was actively and successfully burning itself to the ground. Black residents fled for their lives, trying to escape the wall of fire and the bullets. Many were rounded up by the newly deputized mob and the Oklahoma National Guard, which had finally arrived. But the Guard's first act was not to stop the white rioters. It was to disarm the black victims. Thousands of black Tulsans, mostly women and children, were force-marched to internment centers around the city. They were held at the convention hall, the fairgrounds, and a local baseball stadium, prisoners in their own city for doing nothing but surviving. By the time the violence subsided on the afternoon of June 1st, after 18 hours of terror, Greenwood was gone. The statistics are staggering, and even today they are estimates. 35 square blocks were completely incinerated. Over 1,200 homes and businesses were destroyed. In a single day, 10,000 people were left homeless, living in a Red Cross tent city. And the dead? The official count at the time was 36. We now know this was a lie. Historians and a 2001 State Commission report estimate the true number is closer to 300. Hundreds of people murdered. Their bodies were seen dumped in the Arkansas River.
loaded onto freight trains, or buried in unmarked mass graves that are still being searched for to this day. The financial toll, adjusted for inflation, is estimated at over $200 million. The generational wealth that had been built from nothing was erased in less than 24 hours. And what happened to the perpetrators? What happened to the mob, the deputized officers, the men who flew the planes? Nothing. Not one single white person was ever tried, convicted, or jailed for the murder, arson, or looting committed during the Tulsa Race Massacre. Instead, an all-white grand jury, convened weeks later, blamed the black community for the violence. They indicted black residents for inciting the riot. The charges against Dick Rowland, the young man whose crime started it all, were quietly dismissed. Sarah Page, the elevator operator, had refused to press charges, stating he had merely stumbled. He left Tulsa and was never heard from again. The cover-up was as swift and as thorough as the massacre. The Tulsa Tribune tore its front-page article from its own archives. The police and city records of the event vanished. Insurance claims filed by black residents, totaling in the millions, were universally denied. The massacre, they were told, was a riot, which insurance policies conveniently did not cover. And then, the silence. For the rest of the 20th century, the Tulsa Race Massacre was not taught in schools. It was not mentioned in history books. It was not spoken of, even in Tulsa. For the white community, it was a source of shame, best left buried. For the black survivors, it was a source of trauma, too painful to revisit and too dangerous to speak about. You didn't talk about it. You couldn't. It became America's forgotten secret. But the survivors of Greenwood, despite losing everything, did not give up. They rebuilt. Working out of the tents, they began to reconstruct their community, often with their own hands and with no help from the city that had destroyed them. Within a few years, Black Wall Street was rising from the ashes, a testament to a resilience that is almost impossible to comprehend. But it was never the same. The shadow of the fire and the trauma of the silence lingered. The story remained buried until the late 1990s, when a state commission was finally formed to investigate the event. They dug into archives, they found lost documents, and most importantly, they found the last remaining survivors. These survivors, now in their 80s and 90s, came forward to tell their stories, to finally break the silence that had been forced on them for nearly 80 years. They spoke of the planes, of the fires, of the bodies in the street. The forgotten story wasn't forgotten by those who lived it. It was suppressed. Today, the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre is finally being acknowledged. It's being taught in schools. It's the subject of documentaries and dramatic series. The search for mass graves is ongoing, a grim archaeological dig into America's hidden past. But the story of Black Wall Street is more than a tragedy. It is a story of what was possible. It is a story of economic empowerment and black excellence that defied the oppression of the era. And it is a terrifying lesson, a lesson in what happens when racial hatred, economic jealousy, and a complicit media are allowed to fester. A lesson in how quickly a community can be destroyed and how deliberately that destruction can be hidden. The ashes of Greenwood are a reminder that history, even when it's buried, never truly stays in the past. It waits in the silence to be heard.